Okay. Well, I'm going to attempt it one more time, and if I can't get... Hello, if you're out there, I see I have one person on. We're having some technical difficulties tonight. If you could type in for me anything in your yeah, see, we are losing people. To activate chat, please enable channels. Hello. Hey, Brian, I can see it up there. I can see Bianca. Yeah, it's kind of kind of weird. I can see you guys typing up there, but for some reason it is not showing up. Our chats are not showing up where they normally do. So I've added it so it's on the screen up there. But as far as... Hi, April. But as far as being able to type, for me to type, it is not working. So I can see you. I can see what you're typing, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to type back to you. So again, as you guys have questions, just go ahead and type them. I'll do my best to catch them as we go along. Yes. So we talked about feeding, the formula, something important to keep in mind, and then of course, as I mentioned, tetanus antitoxin. I think that's a huge deal as well. So if you don't have your hands on that, that's something that you will definitely want to make sure that you check out. So, we've got some questions that have come up recently about sales, talking about sale barn, talking about if you should be selling at the sale barn or if you should be um, selling off your farm. And that is a question that you will just have to figure out for yourself. I personally feel like the best money that we make comes off of the sale barn. I think it's just traditionally what works out best. I do get individuals that call us on our farm and they say, hey, would you, I would be willing to buy from you for under market value. That makes no sense for me at all. Basically, when we take animals to the sale barn, we're taking them there so we can get the most out of them, and that is going to show us what the market is demanding. So you run into some issues when you start selling off your farm and you feel the need to start selling for less than market value. I don't think it necessarily works out very well for you. So sell barn if you can. I think it's the best route to go, unless of course you're selling breeding stock or show stock, and that might be something that you're going to want to sell off the farm. But as far as just meat animals are concerned, your best bang for your buck is most definitely going to be a sale barn if you have one in your area. So April says, I'll be bringing home my first Livestock Guardian puppy soon. Great Pyrenees, raised around sheep and goats. What are some good ways to introduce her to my animals? So I think the best way to introduce her to your animals is to get her out there, and let her kind of see the animals, and let them see her, but um, give enough distance that she still feels safe. We think that introducing them to smaller animals first, like lambs and goat kids, works out best. Then we introduce them to females, and then last but not least, we introduce them to the males. You want them to have respect for the animals, so you don't want them to be able to buffalo or beat up on the animals too much. But with that being said, they still need to be able to do their job. They're going to be scared when they first get out there. They're going to be a little bit meek. I think it's important to give them their own area where they can feel comfortable, be it a little kennel or a little area that they can get to, but the sheep or goats can't. And yeah, a lot of it is just, getting them used to being around those animals. Don't hold them too much. Don't, handle them too much, depending on what you want. If you want them to get used to those animals, or if you want them to get used to you, it depends on what you're going to be using this animal for. But it sounds like you're going to be using this for livestock protection. So in that case, make sure that they're spending a majority of their time with the livestock. 30-day quarantine for new animals. I don't necessarily know if that is something that you need to do or not. I think that in some cases it can come in handy, and in other cases it's really not going to matter. If I was buying an animal from the sale barn to bring home to have with my flock, then I would most definitely quarantine it. If you're getting it from a reputable breeder and you know that they run a fairly clean operation, then I don't know if I would go through the hassle. There are some things out there that you're just going to see, like sore mouth, that you're not necessarily going to be able to avoid. So, just something for you to keep in mind. If you've got the space for him, if you've got the time, I'm not necessarily against quarantining, but I don't feel that it's something that you absolutely have to do either. Again, that depends on where you're getting them from. I am just not a huge fan of getting livestock from the sale barn. I think that causes more problems than it does good. So, something that you may want to keep in mind. Uh, you know, I just think um, the sale barn has way too many problems. There's way too many unknowns with bringing animals home from the sale barn. So take it as that, and do as you will. So, what else? Other questions do you guys have? We just posted an article on our on our blog here recently, where we were talking about corn. I talked about cracked corn. If you haven't read our blogs, you should be reading our blogs. You can go to LenessaFarms.com. Just go to blogs and check it out. We were talking about cracked corn versus whole corn today. Generally speaking, nutritional value wise, when it comes to adults, you can't really get that much more out of spending the time and effort to crack the corn as opposed to keeping it whole. So you're better off just feeding it whole. Now, when it comes to the little ones, then of course, in that case, you really need to consider um, doing crack. The littles, that is to say, your lambs and your goat kids just can't handle the whole corn. They're not going to be able to eat it. They're not going to be able to swallow it. You're going to have all kinds of problems. So in that case, yeah, you're going to have to crack the corn down. We don't want to ever crack down to like a fine powder. We always want it like lightly to moderately cracked so they can get to it. There seems to be some thoughts behind it with people, and they think, if I crack it, then they're going to be able to withdraw the nutrients better. It's just not true. Most of the starch that can be absorbed from those animals, most of the stuff that can be absorbed is going to be absorbed. You may see them pooping out what appears to be whole kernels, but really the nutrients have been absorbed out of that fairly well. So check out that article and let me know what you think. Do you know anything about Shelly Hoof and how to correct it? No, I don't. I don't know if that is a. I don't know. I've never heard that term before. So I don't know if that's like a regional kind of thing. I don't know what that looks like or what it is, Cheryl. So you would have to let me know what exactly it is that you're seeing. And then I can let you know if there's another name for it that I might know it by. And we can go from there. There were a couple questions that we got last week that I told individuals I was going to check up on for you. One of those questions was about the barber pole worm and the life cycle of barber pole worm. And the question was, if we have a mild winter, is that going to increase our odds of having animals that are going to get worms next year out on pasture? And the answer to that is that the life cycle of those worms is only 3 months. And so I did a lot of research on this and seeing kind of what the maximum life expectancy is, what the minimum is, how temperatures affect them, and things like that. But even in perfect conditions without a host, even if they, do everything that they can possibly do to survive, the barber pole worm is not going to be able to, or any of its eggs, larvae, anything is going to be able to survive more than 3 months out on a pasture or anywhere for that matter. So, if you keep animals off of a pasture for over 3 months, you should be clear. Any issues that are going to show back up are going to be because you reintroduced it. Now, with that being said, we've talked about how during the winter time, while those animals are essentially on dry lot, or while the temperatures are cold, or they're pregnant, you're going to run into some issues where the mom may test, she may test to where she's not showing any worms at all. And the reason for this is those worms are kind of in a state of hibernation inside of her. And then once she gets close to having her baby, she's going to start dropping eggs like crazy and having some issues going on there. So it's important to keep in mind that just because you test a pregnant ewe or a pregnant doe and they're not showing any worms, it doesn't mean that there truly aren't any worms inside of her. So keep that in mind. As far as Cheryl talking about the separation between the nail and the soft tissue on the hoof, so this can be due to a couple things. This can be due to hoof rot, hoof type infections that they can get in the hoof that's causing some inflammation. This can also be caused by chronic acidosis, to where the animal is always running hot, as far as acidic, as far as the pH being too low in the body. So you're looking at twofold here when it comes to that hoof health. You're looking at any kind of bacteria that they may have. You would want to look for signs and symptoms of that. If you're having some kind of hoof rot or some kind of smelly nastiness, anything going on down there, you're going to want to make sure that you're treating them appropriately with antibiotic and with topical treatments such as Naylor's Hoof and Heel. You can also use copper sulfate. You can use zinc sulfate. You can use a couple different products. I know Dr. Naylor's is a zinc product. The other thing that you want to watch out for is you want to watch out for the acidosis. So what could cause this? Well, it would look like you may be overfeeding them hay, really, really good quality hay, overfeeding them grain. So, we want to keep the happy medium when it comes to our hay. If you're feeding like pure alfalfa hay to sheep and goats, you're overfeeding them. That is to say, they are not able to recuperate all the nutrients that is in there. They do best off of a grass alfalfa mix. The other thing is you can elect to feed them free choice sodium bicarb, which can also help with things like hoof issues, laminitis, and things like that. So check them out, see if there is, see if that might be something that's going on, and go from there. Check out the hoof specifically, make sure that you're not getting any weird smells, anything like that. Check them for hoof rot, and then start leaning more towards your acidotic issues that you may be experiencing. Would you personally say that Dorset or Cordell does better in smaller groups? I have 4 dairy sheep, looking to add 1 or 2 better wool meat breeds to mix with them, and deciding between these two. So 2 different types of sheep when you're looking at um, the Dorsets. They're going to tend to be more of a dual purpose. They're going to be a traditional Dorset, and that's kind of blurring the line. So traditional pulled Dorsets are shorter, frumpier, stockier, dual purpose breed. They breed well out of season. They have good mothering ability. When we traditionally think of Cordales, we think of them as a frame sheep. They're kind of a large bodied sheep, a little bit taller, a little bit longer, and they're more well known for their wool quality. I think personally the Dorset is an all around good sheep. The Cordell is an all around good sheep. But if you're looking for mothering ability and possible meat, then I would tend to lean more towards the Dorset. So just something for you to keep in mind there. A lot of these breeds are going to do well as long as they have a buddy. I think, the only mistake that you could possibly make is to only have one. Now, when you do introduce a new animal into a flock, they're going to kind of go through a little friendship phase where they may not want to have a whole lot to do with them. And then they start having a lot to do with them. And so it may help if you have 2 buddies that came from the same farm. They may do better from a mental health aspect, but I think you'll be okay either way. So, just real quick, I want to apologize for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning of the show. I don't know what is going on. It appears that the mainframe that runs this program that I use did some changes. It used to be that I would see your chats kind of off and to the side, and they were hidden, and I could click on them and make them enlarge. But now it appears the only way I can see anything you guys are saying is by having it come up right here on the screen. So, no harm, no foul. As long as I can see your questions, then I am fine, and you're fine. So we are doing good. Okay, what else do we have here? So, oh look, I don't know if that's a better or worse thing. Um, April, is there a flea or tick med that works safe on both dogs and sheep, or is it better to give dogs their normal drop separate from the sheep? I've only ever had pet dogs before, so that's an interesting question. So, ivermectin, oral sheep drench ivermectin is the same active ingredient that you would get in HeartGuard for your dogs. So, you can use the ivermectin that you give your sheep oral drench. You can inject that into a little piece of hot dog and feed it to your dog once a month, and you will effectively treat them for worms and heartworms. Although the flea and tick medication, uh, no, not so much. They just don't work as well together. So your sheep, for the most part, we don't treat our sheep for fleas and ticks. It's not an issue. It's not something that we deal with. If you start seeing fleas and ticks on your sheep, I would recommend going with like Ultra Boss, some kind of other permethrin mix. I'm a big fan of Silence, but again, I wouldn't necessarily go treating your sheep for fleas and ticks unless you get to the point that you think that you need to do so. As far as the dogs is concerned, yeah, I would just stick with whatever it is that you're using and just go from there. So not interchangeable, but the ivermectin is a cool little trick. I'll post it online here soon. Maybe within the next few days, I'll post the dosages. But basically, it's a very inexpensive way to treat your dog for heartworms. Of course, you'll have to watch because a lot of the medications now include uh, include everything all in one. All right, Cheryl. I might be saying the wrong name. No smell or sore tissue. He's a wether, so no grain. The buck is kind of rough with him and thought maybe he was hurt that way. Yeah, we've seen. So if it's not laminitis, if it's not, um, coming from hoof rot or anything like that, then it could be an injury. The other thing that you've really got to watch is, them possibly getting their feet caught in something and pulling up and getting some damage done there where the hoof meets the kind of meets the meat of the foot there. I've seen this happen before with siding. If you have like corrugated metal that's coming down and then there's just enough of a gap in the ground underneath that metal that they can stick their foot in there and get something caught. So yeah, check that out and see. I would still I would still be curious. If it's happening on one foot only, that leads me to believe that maybe it's an injury. If it's happening on both feet or all 4 feet, no, I think you may be dealing with more of a metabolic issue. Are you feeding? Well, first of all, I guess first question is it more than 1 foot? And then my second question to you would be, do you feed free choice sodium bicarb? And if not, possibly that would be something that you would be willing to do. So let me know. Brian says we can blame our technology issues on China. Since we popped their balloon, they may be getting. Yeah, I didn't have anything directly to do with the balloon popping. So, hopefully they'll keep that in mind when it comes to picking on Linessa Farms. But yeah, you never know. Trying to think of anything else I can tell you guys that's new and exciting. We will be we will be done lambing here soon. I think I've got 3 or 4 more ewes to go. My goats are a little bit farther behind. We're going to be doing a video about making some shelters here really soon as well. If you didn't check out uh, my recent interview with David Cook, where he's talking about body conformation of the sheep and the goats, I would check that out. David was a national judge. He's judged at North American International all over the United States. He's been raising sheep forever. He really knows a lot about body conformation, and he had some really nice tips that he put out there regarding how to teach your animal to brace, how to hold them for show, things like that. So even though it's a sheep video, I think it will be beneficial to pretty much everyone. Went and picked up some whole shell corn last night. Gonna have a video about that as well. So we purchase whole shell corn in large containers. Basically, I go out to the farmer's farm and he's got an auger and he just loads it up with loads these containers up with corn. We refer to them as mini bulk containers here where I'm at in Indiana. They're the large plastic totes that farms usually get chemicals in, kind of have a spigot down at the bottom. I just go in with a saw and cut the tops off and then put them on a flatbed trailer, drive out to the farm and have them loaded up. So why on earth would I do this? Well, whole shell corn, when you buy it by the bushel, so you're paying these farmers per bushel, essentially you're getting about, we'll say roughly 55 pounds to bushel. And that is pretty beneficial when it comes out off the scale and you're writing your check, because right now, for instance, we're paying about $6.85 for a bushel of corn. And so to put it into perspective for you, last night I got about 2,800 pounds of corn from this individual, and he I think I ended up paying $360, something like that. So for 2,800 pounds of corn, that's a pretty darn good deal, especially when you consider how much it costs to buy feed. Now I know some of you don't feed grain, but again, something for you to consider. If you're feeding grain, talk to your local farmers. That can be very beneficial for you. And let's be honest, nowadays when it comes to that kind of stuff, any money you can save is very, very beneficial. Okie dokie. So Cheryl, you're saying just 1 foot, baking soda, minerals. I bet he had some kind of an accident, Cheryl. Maybe he stepped in something, and when he was pulling his foot out, he got it. He could have got his foot stepped on by another animal. I wouldn't lose much sleep over it at night. At this point, there's a couple things that you can do. If it starts to get funky on you, you can spray. I would spray with wound spray regardless. I would consider, if it's bleeding, I would consider wrapping it with a dressing and Coban for at least a few days, and allow it to heal up, and then take the Coban off, let it get some fresh air, and go from there. If you've got really muddy stuff this time of year, make sure that you are trying to keep it as clean as possible. So that's about the best that you can do. But yeah, when you're looking at 1 foot, I would say chances are you're dealing with some kind of an injury. Jason Johnson, hello, Jason. Cedars, yeah. So what the heck's a cedar? So a cedar is a hormonal implant, intravaginal implant that you can put in a sheep or a goat. Usually we'll put this in for about a week. We pull it and then we give them a shot of another medication, and then within 24 hours, usually they'll go into estrus. So a cedar is something that you can buy. You don't need to have a veterinary prescription for it. You can buy these online along with the PG600, which is the injectable that you'll chase this with. Cedars are not magical things. A lot of people think that this progesterone suppository is going to make sheep and goats breed whenever you want them to, and that's not necessarily the case. They work really well when used in conjunction with a natural breeding cycle, but you have to be cautious with that. So something for you to keep in mind. They are expensive as well. Um, so you have to just figure, is this cost advantageous for me? Is it not? I use Cedars a lot. I like them. I like the idea that I can time my flock in order for them all to have their babies at and or around the same time. That's important to me. If that's important to you, then something that you definitely are going to want to consider. When it comes to getting laparoscopic artificial insemination, or giving them doing any kind of artificial insemination, a cedar is a must, and it's something that your veterinarian or whoever's doing this is going to work with you and let you know what you're going to give them and how much you're going to give them and when you're going to give them. A lot of people think like the artificial insemination is like you just take your animal over there and or you have someone come over and they just do what they need to do and you go. No, 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 no. It is a long drawn out process that involves preparation for the female. You have to make sure that she is ovulating. You have to make sure that everything is just right, she's well nourished, and just like we would normally. And then you go through the insemination process. So Melissa Clark said cedar oil kills and repels ticks. Don't know about that. So okay, if you want to try to do that, that is up to you. Again, we don't usually use flea and tick medication on our sheep or our goats for that matter. We don't normally have any issues with it. But if you start having issues, I'm sure there are certain remedies and things out there that you can consider. Just make sure you do your due diligence to actually look up the information behind that. Make sure that you're not going to have any other side effects, and make sure that it does in fact work. We had an individual recently that asked me about diatomaceous earth. Again, probably one of the most overrated products on the face of the earth. I wish I could find a product that I could bag and sell for as much as they bag and sell that stuff. I would not be working anymore. I just sit around and make videos with you guys all day long. Diatomaceous earth works in very specific instances. It does not work when given orally for worming. It just doesn't. I know I say that and people yell and scream and jump up and down, and that's okay. You can get angry. It still doesn't work. The other thing to consider about diatomaceous earth is that it is extremely irritating to the soft tissues of the body and to the mucous membranes. It is not good for you to breathe in. It is not good for your lungs. It is not good for your skin. It is not good for your nasal passages, any of that stuff. So very important to remember if you're going to be dusting your animals with diatomaceous earth, it's very important that you don't breathe that in. Please don't dust your animals' feed with diatomaceous earth. They're just going to breathe it in. They're going to create the dust and they're going to breathe it in. It's going to irritate the lining of their throat, their nose, and their lungs, and they're going to be miserable, and you're going to have more problems than you do good. The best way to use diatomaceous earth is to leave it in the bag on the store shelf. What are your thoughts on a base grain to feed? I've been buying all stock sweet feed from Tractor Supply and mixing in soybean to get the protein out, but it gets expensive at $16 a bag. When you talk about base historically, it's corn. I travel a lot. I go to a lot of different farms. I see a lot of different people feeding a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, most of these big farms, some of the most successful farms that I go to, are just feeding corn. Like they just feed whole shell corn and a free choice mineral. That's it. Everybody's feeding corn, and for a good reason. It keeps well. It's relatively inexpensive. It's highly nutritious. Of course, it does have its caveats. So it is fairly low in protein. It makes up for that by being high in energy, high in starch. With that being said, you can overfeed. The animals can go acidotic. If you're going to be feeding it, we want to make sure that we are appropriately preparing that animal by giving them their vaccines for Clostridium type C and D. You can bump up protein with soybeans. Now, soybeans are most easily digested by cooking them, extracting some of their oil, and that helps to change them up a little bit. Basically, ruminants can digest whole raw soybeans up to, the studies say, between 10 and 15% of their total grain diet. And then after that, you're kind of pushing it. Although, when we think about lambs and goat kids, while they are ruminants, it takes a number of weeks for that rumen to really start going. So, really, when you look at a baby lamb or a baby goat, they are, for all intents and purposes, monogastric, that is to say, one stomach, because that rumen just isn't cooking yet. So, how do we overcome this? Well, we want to start feeding these animals creep feed in some instances as soon as possible to get them on creep and going well. And so in that case, we would want to utilize cracked corn, and we would want to utilize soybean meal, or um, cracked, rolled, roasted soybeans is another way that you can go. So, for years and years and years, when I was a kid, creep feed consisted of cracked corn and soybean meal. That was creep feed. It was mixed up, and that was the creep feed. These pellets and things like that, nobody used them. So, I think corn is a great way for you to go. Again, reach out to a local farmer. Talk to a local farmer that you know, if you know any farmers. A lot of these guys and gals know each other. So if you get in touch with one and you just say, "Hey, where can I get my hands on some corn?" They will put you in touch probably with someone that has it. You can go out and buy it in large quantities, hopefully from them, and hopefully you can save yourself a ton of money. When you're looking at $16 a bag, you're looking at, you know, something nutty like 600 something dollars for a ton. You can get corn at a fraction of that. It's not going to be as high a protein, but you can do some things to doctor that up to get it to a little bit higher protein. I think you're still going to save a lot of money. So just something to consider. Whole shell corn. People say, well, what if I want to mix in Coccidia medication, or what if I want to mix in minerals or something like that? Absolutely, you can do that with whole shell corn. You put whole shell corn in your mixer. You add a couple cups, put 50 pounds of whole shell corn in a mixer, add a couple cups of molasses, spin it up, coat that corn with molasses, and then throw in all the dry powders you want. It'll mix it up. It'll evenly disperse itself on that corn. It'll stick to the corn, and you dump it out and you're good to go. It really does work. It really is that easy. And I will make a video about that really soon so you guys can see how easy it is. Jason Johnson wants me to go into more details about the PG600, how many cc's, and lambing rate with polypay. So, the lambing rate that you're going to see when it comes to your ewes, and the kidding rate you're going to see when it comes to your does, is very, that is a tough question to answer. It depends on the age, it depends on the health, and it depends on the genetics of both the female and the male. So you're dealing with a lot of things. Now, the Polypay is a mixed breed that has a lot of good attributes when it comes to prolificity, the number of babies that we tend to see, and the ability to breed out of season. So we can say, in a perfect world, if you are breeding, if it's all polypays, if it's polypay moms and polypay dads, and you are using a cedar and PG600, then you can expect to see, at least, you're going to be getting pretty close to a 2-for-1. That is to say, for every one you're going to get two babies. You could see more. You could see some triplets. But again, it's impossible for me to give you an accurate number. And I would be very weary of someone that is trying to just throw arbitrary numbers at you. Because again, are you flushing those ewes? Are you feeding those ewes out appropriately? Do they have the right body condition? There's a lot of science that goes into flushing ewes and does. That can be nutritional. It can be body condition going into the breed. Lots and lots of things. Now, university studies differ when it comes to the PG600. I want to say last year, based off what the universities were telling me, I want to say I used 2.25 ml IM in the neck is what I did. I did do some sub Q in the neck just because I'm a science nerd and I wanted to see if it made any difference. It made no difference whatsoever, none that I could see between the U's. I did about half of my U's with a 2.25 milliliter subcutaneous on the side of the neck, and the other half, 2.25 milliliters IM in the neck. Didn't notice any difference whatsoever. They all ovulated about the same time. They all bred about the same time. Everything worked out pretty good. Now, do I feel 100% comfortable telling you that 2.25 is the number? No, because about the time that I think that I am giving you, the exact right number, then something happens and I look it up after the show and I'm like, damn, I gave him the wrong number. But you can do a quick Google search, or you can wait for me to do my retort to this video and you'll see. But I believe that I was given 2.25 for the PG 600. So I do 7 days. I do 7 days on the cedar, pull the cedar, and then give them the injection right away as soon as I pull it. And then usually we'll see them within 24 hours. We'll see them go. More PG 600 is not better. That is a huge takeaway that you would want to consider when it comes to using the PG 600. People say, well, you give 2.25 mLs and it works really well. And you say to yourself, well, if 2.25 works well, then 3 should work even better. And that's not, that is not the case. So we will keep you posted and you keep us posted. I'll look up some more information on the dosage for you, Jason, and I'll make sure I get that posted on our website soon. So please check that out and follow along, and I'll do the best I can for you. Deborah. Hi, Deborah. So Deborah says, will you be going to any Romney farms this year? Would love to see some Romney breeders and their stock. I suppose I could do that. I know a Romney breeder in southern Indiana. She is, can't remember where she's at. She's right on the Indiana-Kentucky border, right on the river down there. And she actually raises Romney. We had some Romney for a number of years. We raised them, we bred them. And we had a Romney ram that we actually showed at the fair. My daughter showed him. His name was Mitt, which I thought was a pretty appropriate name for a Romney sheep. So we liked Mitt. He's a pretty cool guy. Very good demeanor. Romney sheep, they seem to do very well known for wool. They're cute little suckers, black nose, black hoof. Very nice wool, very good demeanor, very impervious to hoof rot, which is good. So the original name for Romney sheep, if you go back to Europe, is Romney Marsh. And a lot of these animals, as you guys probably know, the name a lot of times comes from the area that they were originally from. So the Romney Marsh gives you a clue to what kind of land this animal came from, and it came from very wet soiled areas. And so that is one of the good parts about Romney sheep, is that they tend to be very, very well suited for wetter ground, and it doesn't seem to bother their feet very much at all. So, something that you may want to consider if you live in a really, really wet area and you have lots and lots and lots of problems with hoof rot, Romney may be some kind of genetics that you might want to consider bringing into your farm. And with that being said, that's the beauty of genetics, right? You can pick and do research on animals and decide which ones work out best for you and bring them into your farm and go from there. So, you can make your own breed, so to speak, on your farm by bringing in different genetics. So I think that's kind of cool and it's kind of fun. And you can go to farms and learn about new breeds that maybe you hadn't known about before, breed them in and see how things go. I really think that the hybrid vigor that you see from different breeds coming together, you can really get some fantastic looking animals. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. Kind of maybe step out of the box, try something new, see how it works for you. Beware of the people out there that offer you simple solutions for complex problems. Raising sheep and goats is complex, um, very complex. We talk about parasites, we talk about breeding, we talk about nutrition, and then you look at all the things that go into that. What kind of a setup are you running? How much land do you have? How many animals do you have? What resources do you have available to you as far as medication and feed stuff is concerned? And so you'll see people online that'll put out videos and they'll say things like, well, it's all this, it's the secret is, and then they'll begin to tell you what the secret is, and they try to give a single solution for a very complex problem. And this is pretty self-serving. It works pretty good because if you can boil down a problem uh, simple enough that you can give one solution for it, then you instantly become the subject matter expert on that solution. Um, and it sounds easy, and so a lot of people are going to back you up and support you because they're like, yeah, it's all just this, it's all just free ranging, or it's all just this breed. And it's just not ever that simple. And again, it bears repeating. There's if there's a few things that I say on our channel all the time. The first one is I'm not a veterinarian, and anybody that's been listening to us for a while has heard me say that quite a few times. The other thing is, take what I say and bounce it against your farm and you see what sticks. Some of the stuff that I tell you isn't going to work. Some of the stuff that it's just not. It's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for your setup. Other things I tell you might work really well. You just go around to reliable sources and you glean what information you can and you put it in your basket and you apply that to your farm and then you go from there. And then hopefully you gather some good information that you can share with us and that you can share with your friends, and everybody's happy and we all do well. So Jason Johnson says, thank you, Tim. We love your channel. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you watching. If you're interested in doing a trip to a dairy sheep breeder, oh, very cool. Green Dirt Farms in Missouri, just north of Kansas City, would be a great one to contact. Well, that's great. If you get a chance, um, send me an email at customer service at LinessaFarms.com with that information. I'd be really interested in having more information about that farm. We're always up for interviewing people and talking to people, even if they're too far away for me to actually drive there. I can always have them come on here, and we can just do kind of a talk and see what kind of information we can share. Dairy sheep, that is not something that you run into very often, so that is very cool. We will be doing an interview with a dairy goat farm pretty soon coming up. That will be pretty awesome because they actually make like soaps and candles and lotions and things like that. So that's going to be a little bit of a change of pace that we're going to be going and interviewing them. That's going to be coming up in April. We're going to be doing some kind of like out of the box things. So we're going to be going to a border collie training facility where we're going to see how they train the border collies to herd and work livestock. We're going to be doing the soap thing. We're going to be doing we're actually going to be doing a hog butcher pretty soon coming up. That's kind of cool. We're going to be going to a mini cow farm, mini cattle, so miniature Herefords. We're going to be going to a sale barn. We have lots and lots of cool stuff coming up, so I'm pretty excited about that. I think going to the sheep and goat farms is very important, but I think kind of doing some of these out of the box things that still apply to all of us is going to be helpful as well. So we'll be excited to share that with you coming up. Okay. So face shields. Yes, I have experience with face shields. So Smooth Move wants to know if I have any experience on face shields to prevent rams from charging. Are these reliable? So yeah, a lot of the old timers will refer to them as blinders. And essentially, what it is it's a shield that's going to go in front of that animal's face. So they're still able to see with their peripheral vision, but they're not able to see straight on. And we like to utilize this a lot with males that like to ram things or ram people or other animals. They do work pretty good. I would recommend getting the leather ones. They do have some fabric ones. The leather ones seem to last a little bit longer. Sheep do have scent glands that are located on their face, and so a lot of times they're rubbing their heads on you or on things. They're putting their scent on there. This is located by their eye, and so if you get the fabric face shields, a lot of times um, they'll just rub them and break them after a very short amount of time. The other thing that you may find is a lot of times you have to watch head size and head shape as well. If they've got a really small head, that can create some issues to where it just doesn't work properly. So something that you will just have to kind of hash out as you go along. But yeah, they do work. They work well. Lots of people use them. It's one of those old school things that we've been using for a very, very long time, and they are very, very beneficial. So, hi, Krista. So Krista wants to know. She says her other half is Jason, uh, and she wants to know what would cause false pregnancy in nannies and goats. So any animal that's experiencing false pregnancy, you're running into a hormonal imbalance for whatever reason. Basically, the body thinks that it's pregnant, and it's not. You can see this in dogs. You can see this in sheep. You can see this in goats. You can see this in pretty much all mammals. Telltale signs usually is going to be that they will get some lactation like qualities that are starting. They may not actually lactate. They may actually get to where they are starting to, develop as far as the udder is concerned, and it just never manifests. The other thing that you can see is they'll go off a feed. They can get kind of dumpy and frumpy to where they don't feel very good. Generally speaking, you'll run into this if the other animals in the flock are pregnant and for some reason they missed. If they're used to running on a cycle to where they usually get pregnant and you withhold them from a male, so let's say you have a female that you breed every year. And so this is just going off of what the literature says. This isn't my personal experience. I don't believe I've had this happen with a goat. I've had this happen with dogs, but I haven't had this happen with a goat or a sheep. The literature says that if you have a sheep or a goat that you breed at the same time every year over and over and over, and then for whatever reason, one year you just say, oh, I'm not doing it. Or for some reason she's not ovulating appropriately and she doesn't get pregnant, she still can go through certain phases which cause her to have that false pregnancy symptoms and display that false pregnancy. Usually it corrects itself. There is some anecdotal evidence to say that high estrogen feed stuff, be it certain grains that have high phytoestrogens like soy and clover, things like that, can have some variations on this as well. And so I suspect if you had a perfect storm where you have an animal that's used to breeding, they don't breed, they're eating high estrogen feed stuff, that may be part of your issue. Again, the good news is they usually will resolve on their own. Most of them will be able to breed again later on, but it can mess them up for quite some time as far as their cycle is concerned, to where you may miss a complete season and they're not able to appropriately breed back until the next regular breeding season. So Cheryl says, don't forget to hit the like button. Yeah, that does help us out a lot. And I do appreciate that. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else I specifically wanted to tell you guys. This year is the first year that we are giving toltrazuril to all of our lambs and goat kids. So we normally give Coccidia prevention medications to all of our animals. It's usually in the form of decox or rumensin, and we give that to them. The concern is that those babies just may not ingest enough to be appropriately treating them. So you run into this weird thing when you're feeding your animals creep feed and you're trying to medicate them, and that is, you want to medicate the feed enough that they're getting the appropriate dose, but you don't want to medicate it so much that there's a chance that you're going to overdose them. And then you have this wide window of how much feed animals eat. And you'll notice this with your creep is that, some of the babies will just eat like hell every day. They're just in there scarfing it down. And then others aren't eating hardly anything at all. I've talked with some large producers overseas in Australia and some other places. And what they're telling me is they're giving doses of totrazeril to their lambs and to their goat kids at 30, 60, and 90 days, just a single dose at 30, 60, and 90 days. So totrazeril is it will kill Coccidia, and it helps to prevent and treat Coccidia as well. So that is what we're doing. And I will keep you posted. I'll let you know how things are going. Right now, the lamb crop is doing pretty well. Now, of course, we do raise a majority of our sheep and our goats are meat breeds. But as far as our lambs are concerned, I know last night we gave our 6-week CDT shot, and we've got lambs that are already 40 plus pound lambs at 6 weeks of age. So we're pretty happy about that, and that's working out really well for us. We'll post some pictures and we'll show you guys some stuff online coming up soon as well. Brian Stewart, hello Brian. Which works best, decox or the medicated sheep and goat feed? So decox, the best is when you can add that medication to the sheep and goat feed. So you can go to Tractor Supply and buy sheep and goat medicated feed, I think is what they call it, and I believe that's decox. Or you can just buy the premix. We sell Rumensin, we sell decox, we sell Bovatec, we sell all that on our feed store, and we sell it in the powder that's ready to mix. You're going to get 10 pounds from us, and that 10-pound package is basically ready to be mixed into 1 ton of feed. So with a little bit of simple math, you can figure out how much you need to add to every 50-pound batch. And that usually works best. If you can mix that into your feed that they're getting every day, that usually works best. We do sell minerals, the mineral mix that has that in there, that has the medication in there, that has decox in it. We sell a complete sheep mineral, free choice sheep. So it's our classic sheep mineral plus vitamins with decox added. We also sell our goat mineral plus vitamins with decox added. So for those of you that are like, I don't feed grain, and so it's like, okay, well then how am I going to get this to them? That's where we put it in the mineral for you, so you have that option as well. Because we understand, grain's not for everybody. Some people don't feed grain, and we still want you to be able to, have something that's going to work for you. When it comes to creep feeding, remember, creep feeding is about the setup and about the place for the lambs and goat kids to go to get kind of away from the adults, to get into their own little safe place, kind of hang out. I think of it as like the sheep and goat lounge. And you don't have to have grain in there. You don't have to have a feeder in there. You can have water and good quality hay in there. And it's just an area that they can get away from the adults, and they're not going to have the stress of those adults, trying to push them out and get to the feed. So by all means, if you want to be anti-grain, that's perfectly fine. But don't think that you don't, or that you can't have a creep area. You can have a creep area set up and just put some nice, soft, good quality hay in there. Maybe stuff that's not quite so stemmy, that's a little bit more palatable. You can put that in there in those little hanging net bags and have a nice area for your lambs or goat kids to go into and get a hold of some good quality hay, some nice clean water, a nice place to relax, maybe a heat lamp if you live in a cold climate and you just want a place for them to kind of hang out, and let them do that. With that being said, even on open range, for those of you that have your animals out on pasture, You can utilize creep gates out on pasture as well. Maybe you have a pasture area that's really nice and green and lush, and you would like your lambs and goat kids to be able to get out on that before the adults go out and destroy it. You can set up a creep gate that only allows your babies to go out into a pasture. So, when it comes to creep feeding, start thinking outside of the box. A lot of people think, creep feeding means grain, and really, creep feeding means having an area that's segregated to where only the babies can get in and the adults cannot. And I think if you start wrapping your head around that, and start maybe trying to utilize that, that might be something that works out well for you. It might be another way that you can help to improve your flock or your herd. All right. So I'm getting ready to wrap it up. I appreciate you all joining us today. Oh, we got another one. How do you feel about llamas for protection? Um, I feel that I have had llamas and alpacas. Llamas and alpacas are a very interesting animal. They aren't great for protection. What they are good for, they'll confront and something that's not supposed to be in there, and then it's a matter of how well does that animal respond to being confronted. What we do notice with sheep and goats is that an alpaca or a llama will tend to round them up. If they feel that they're being threatened, they'll tend to round them up and kind of get them away and into an area away from where the predator is. But overall, are they going to, uh, keep a coyote at bay or a wolf at bay? No, probably not. They may be able to round all your animals up and get them into a safe location. But as far as being able to fight off something, probably not. They are pretty tough. They are pretty scary when they get up in your business, but not necessarily going to be the best for livestock protection. And I would consider a pretty extensive experience with that. We had 3 alpacas and a llama for a number of years with our animals, and they did okay. Um, the other thing that I would like you to consider about llamas and alpacas is that they are highly, highly susceptible to meningocele worm. So if you have white-tailed deer in your area, that is something that you most definitely need to keep in mind with llamas and alpacas. Oh, excuse me. With llamas and alpacas, a lot of veterinarians, at least in our area of Indiana, tell us that those llamas and alpacas need to be treated monthly in order to keep meningocele worm at bay. If they do get meningocele worm, chances are it's going to be fatal. They don't respond very well to it at all. I can speak to this personally. We have lost some llamas and alpacas to meningocele worm, despite worming them with essentially the same protocol that we worm our sheep and goats with. The other issue that you run into with llamas and alpacas is the way that their stomachs work. They're not a true ruminant. And so some of the Coccidia medications that you give can be poisonous for them. Same thing with horses. You need to be very cautious when you're dealing with medicated sheep and goat. Feeds can be basically toxic to other animals. So something that you need to most definitely keep in mind. If you're going to raise llamas and alpacas and you're going to be feeding medicated feed to your sheep and goats, you're going to have to separate them out. So trying to think of anything else I can tell you about llamas or alpacas, and that is it off the top of my head. They're a real bear to shear. That's an art to shear them appropriately. So I will let you figure that one out. Normally, your sheep shearer will shear llamas and alpacas as well. All right. So we have stuff coming up again here real soon. I think next week we're going to try to get Rick Adams on here and just have Rick on here to help talk and just to share some ideas and answer some questions, just so you guys can get a different perspective. He is very, very knowledgeable and he's just fun to talk with. And I talked to him this week. I think we're going to have him on. So that is that. I appreciate everyone joining us tonight. I am again sorry for the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning of the show. Hopefully those resolve themselves. I'll dig into this a little bit and see what I can come up with for the next show, but that is that. I am Tim from Linessa Farms Specialty and Heirloom Livestock. Thanks for joining me again today, and I look forward to seeing all of you again next time.